Hello, everyone. My name is Emily Nicholson. I will let my fellow panelists introduce themselves, but I am one of the Die for Ag coordinators. We're so excited that you're interested in the Rangeland app and learning a little bit more about how Rangeland might intersect with your life. So I'm going to pass it over to Dr. Moore, and she could take it from there.
Yeah, my name is Dr. Moore. I'm also a program coordinator on this project. I'm really excited y'all are here to learn more about Rangeland. It's one of those things that I didn't know what I didn't know. And then once I really started learning about Rangeland, oh my gosh, it's just like this whole other world you didn't know existed, so close to you. And then once you see a rangeland, you know what a rangeland is. It's like, oh, is that a rangeland? It is something that has really opened my eyes to a lot. So I'm really excited that y'all get to learn about it too, especially from Dr. Rispe. So.
Excellent. Good afternoon. My name is Dr. Sergio Arispe, and I am with Oregon State University in southeastern Oregon. And unlike my colleagues, Dr. Moore and Emily, I'm in the high desert. And so what that means is we don't get much rain, and we have a lot of wide open spaces. So I am the content expert related to the Rangeland platform that you all have seen. And I look forward to engaging you all in conversation and talking about what we find out on these vast and wide landscapes. Excellent. So would you like me to go ahead and begin? Or do you want
go ahead. No, that'd be great. I think Dr. Arispe is going to talk a little bit about how your life might tie into Rangeland, and then we will open it up for any questions, including from us, Dr. Moore, if we have any.
Excellent. So I'm going to go ahead and share. We good to go. Excellent. So here we are. I know that you all are delving into the Die4Ag Rangeland app and developing some pretty neat content for your classmates, working in host with friends, teachers. So the first question that I have right now would be, what in the world are rangelands? You delved into this app, and I don't know. The question is okay, what are these things? Have I ever been there? Where have I connected? And is there a place maybe I like to go that actually are rangelands? So that's one of the questions that I have for you all. And I don't know if it's appropriate to open it up right now, or should we just continue to move forward in this, Emily?
I think it might be best just to move forward. And then if questions come up, always welcome to put those in the Q&A session, the section there.
Excellent. All right. So we're going to move forward. So what are rangelands? Now, I bet you've been out on rangelands before, whether you know it or not. If you fished, if you've hiked, maybe if you have driven across the country, the state, or maybe if you've traveled internationally, you may have crossed and been on some rangelands. And I'd even go as far to say that you have probably had some of your most amazing times in your life out on rangelands without even knowing it. So let's go ahead and see. Maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong. So what are rangelands? So rangelands are these vast, large, wide open landscapes. Now, they're not forests, as we see in this picture here, and this picture was taken out in Yellowstone. These are rangelands are lands that are characterized by different plant communities and ecosystem. And what's an ecosystem? An ecosystem is a space that brings together plants, animals, brings together insects like bumblebees, honeybees, butterflies. It brings together microbes, microbial organisms, soil, and it creates just the natural beauty that you see out here. Now, this would be the sagebrush steppe, and not here in Oregon, but it is in the Western United States. And this is an example of a rangeland. Now, I did talk about the sagebrush steppe, and within the DIFRA-AG module, we're specifically focusing in on the Oregon sagebrush steppe. And what you'll learn is that there are 5 main components of this the sagebrush steppe in Oregon. And whether you live in Oregon or you live outside of Oregon, this sagebrush steppe isn't only in Oregon, rather it extends to was it 9 different states in the Western United States, and it even goes up into Canada. So it's pretty amazing. And so as we see here, when we talk about the sagebrush steppe, we're talking specifically about this plant community characterized by this shrub that you see right here, the bush. It's a sagebrush. You see where the bush is, with kind of like I'd say the green and gray leaves. I don't know if you can see my cursor here, but that's sagebrush. And if you take the leaf and you pluck it off, what you see is a leaf, and it has 3 teeth on it. 1, 2, 3, just like a trident. Now, if you've seen The Little Mermaid, you know that the king of the undersea has a trident, right? Trident. And if you look at the Latin word, it has to be 3 teeth. If you speak another language, if you speak a Latin-based language, you know, dent or diente is like tooth, dental, 3 teeth. And so the sagebrush leaf has 3 teeth on it. So just wanted you to nerd out with me for a second. So what we have here is a sagebrush steppe, and on here there are multiple animals such as deer, elk, such as pronghorn antelopes, honeybees, butterflies, and those animals depend on a lot of the plants. So we see the vibrant colors and the flowers. Those are wildflowers, or what we call forbs. They're shrubs, they're grasses, and these are all important components of the sagebrush rangelands. You will also find it in the app that there's soils that are important. And those soils support the plants and the animals. And then we have also the water resources. So if you look across the entire world, you don't see specifically sagebrush rangelands, but you see rangelands everywhere. And over 50% of the Earth's surface are actually characterized as rangelands. So what we have here is we have a map of the world, and the parts that aren't rangelands are white, such as the Arctic up north. There's Greenland, Antarctica. Then you see up north, there's some lakes, like if you look at the Great Lakes in the United States, and then you have forests, which are the light green. Everything else across the world are classified as rangelands. So the question that I have, and I'd like to engage with you all, what are rangelands that you would like to visit? What are some rangelands that you've seen before? And what questions do you have about rangelands? So I'd like to open it up, because I really think that you all have valuable experiences and questions about rangelands, and we'd love to talk to you all about that.
While everyone is typing their answers in either chat or the Q&A section, I will answer. I just got back from a family trip to New Zealand, and on the southern island, there's these vast grasslands that are just beautiful to look at, and were used in the filming of Lord of the Rings, which to me was a big plus. Those are the most recent rangelands that I have visited. That was really neat.
Excellent. And rangelands in New Zealand are really unique. There are a lot of indigenous plants down there that aren't like what we have in North America. And so I love those open landscapes in those movies like Lord of the Rings, if you all have seen Lord of the Rings. Yeah, it sustains the life and also contributes to just a healthy ecosystem for plants, for people, and for animals. So, what rangelands have you all visited? You all can use the chat if you're not able to use your mic. If you have any questions about rangelands.
We have a question. What do you know about the rangelands of North Africa?
Excellent. So the rangelands of North Africa. So, you know what? There are multiple rangelands within North Africa. Let me go ahead and go back to this map right here. So these are the rangelands of the world, and desert can actually be rangelands. And what we want to point out is the one thing, where rangelands are, there needs to be plants, and believe it or not, in the desert, there are also plants, and they might be very sparse, but they're still there, and they're supporting life. And so, one of the things that we do know is that the desert or the arid area within North Africa can continue to expand, and that it is up to people and governments to come together to ensure that we work together to manage these ecosystems, these rangelands. And so there's concerted effort to make sure that the plants continue to thrive there, and they can hold moisture, which then brings bugs, and which can support animal life, and it can propel a healthy environment. But I've never been to North Africa, but I'm familiar kind of with some of the pastoralism. That means taking animals, in particular small, animals like sheep or goats, and using some of those plants to support people, communities, with meat and with milk.
I have one question looking at this map here. So it says the dark green is a woodland and the light green is a forest. Can you explain the difference between a woodland and a forest? Because to me, it sounds like woodlands, trees and that sort of thing. So what's the difference between a woodland and a forest?
Yeah, really the distinction between a woodland kind of in the savanna and a forest has to do with how sparse the tree areas are and how much canopy there is. So when you're in a forest, whenever you look up, you can see a canopy. You can see a canopy where the sun may have a difficult time penetrating through all those leaves and getting down to the ground. And sometimes if you open up that canopy, the sun will hit the ground and you have a lot of plants that begin to grow. And so the woodland is typically a sparse area, and they don't have a canopy to where it's contiguous. Now, we're talking about these large landscapes, right? We're talking about there may be 50 acres or 100 acres that have this kind of a canopy where it looks kind of like what one may say would be a forest. But these are areas where there's typically not that much rain. And so you don't have these big high trees with big trunks and have a canopy that doesn't let the sun come through. So hopefully that helps out. Does that answer your question, Emily?
It does, yes. I'm trying to imagine, have I been in a woodland? But in lots of forests around here. But I don't know if I've ever been in a woodland savanna area.
Yeah, and these could be areas such as I know like in the southern part of the United States, there are mesquite. It's kind of like a shrub. It's not a tree with a big trunk, but yet they can reach about 20 feet tall, 10 to 20 feet tall, and they're not as thick and dense as a tree, but yet they're sparse. And that would be an example of kind of a woodland area on the rangeland.
I was gonna say, I'm not seeing many more questions come in, but I would love to hear from either you or Dr. Moore, and I'll give my thoughts too on some of the ways that these rangelands can connect to your life, right? You talked about fishing, if you go hiking, that sort of thing. But to me, just getting back from a vacation, a lot of it is, oh, I went on vacation 2 weeks ago, and here are some pictures that I saw of rangelands, and this is how I connected to them. So trying to give some ideas to these teams that want to focus on rangelands, how might that connect to my life?
Absolutely. I'd like to really go back to, what do you enjoy doing? Are you able to get out of the city to go visit national parks? What's your favorite national park? Now, what were those experiences like? And if you think about maybe some of the trips that you've taken, it may have included just picking up rocks or picking the flowers, and all of those items, right? The plants, the natural resources wouldn't be there unless it's managed properly. Now, I would say that there is a huge threat for us to lose all of these incredible natural resources. And if you all watched the news or heard about it within the last year alone, Yellowstone had a devastating flood. That Yellowstone National Park, out of Wyoming, Montana area, had a huge flood and devastated that ecosystem. And so working to protect rangelands and to protect soil and to protect the waterways and the animals that live off the plants and that live off the soil is really, really important. And there's so much need to learn more about the environment, so we can enjoy beautiful animals out on the landscape, such as birds of prey, the bald eagles that are out there, the raptors such as the osprey, the fish, the brown trout in our rivers, all the way to the spotted frog. So there are countless animals that depend on these rangelands, and we need more students pursuing just studies related to these rangelands, so we can keep all these different species alive, and we can thoroughly enjoy them when we're with our families out on the rangelands. So what parts of Oregon are classified as rangelands, and what's important about them? So thank you for asking that question, Cannon. So if you look in Oregon, I would say the majority of Oregon is actually classified as rangelands. In particular, let's see. In particular, central and southeastern Oregon um, are 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 part of what we call the was it the Oregon Basin or Oregon Range and Basin. And what's so unique about them is they provide habitat. That means they provide the plants and the soil necessary for the plants to create habitat in a place where animals can live, such as the bighorn sheep, such as white-tailed deer, elk. I mentioned birds of prey, but if you've seen just how splendid eagles and hawks are out on the landscape, they provide habitat for the prey that those birds eat. And then they also provide water. And so a lot of the water that we have for agricultural production, we have a lot of water for our rivers. Those are all due in part to rangelands, because the water comes from the snow that is up high in the mountains, and that snow travels across rangelands into rivers, passes by some of the large rivers that are near your houses or your homes or wherever you live, and ultimately will get to the ocean. So rangelands are important to sustain just natural beauty. And sometimes if we get locked in a city, we come to our norm can be just the beauty of the city, of the construction, right, of the buildings, of the great food and the great culture. But that food comes from, outside the city. And beyond agriculture, we have just a native landscape like you see here that is just kind of can take you back to nature. And this is what it was like before people were on this earth. So hopefully that answers your question, Ken. And it's important because it helps out from, I guess, an environmental standpoint. It helps provide a place of relaxation, and also provides a place where these plants can capture carbon dioxide, and we can also protect our earth and our environment by having these plants capture that carbon dioxide.
Okay, we will give a couple more minutes. If anyone has any final questions for Dr. Arispe. And I did want to point out that if you have questions after we log off, like, oh, I forgot to ask that, you can always email diveforag@oregonstate.edu, and Dr. Moore and I can definitely make sure that Dr. Arispe gets to answer that question and get that information back to you.
One thing I've always thought that was really interesting when I see pictures like this, before I knew a lot about rangeland, I always thought there's just a lot of plants. They were just kind of, that was it. This like scenic, beautiful landscape. But you're kind of alluding to there's a lot more animals and activities. Is there any interesting animals that like specifically live in rangelands that you can't find in other places?
Oh man, that would be a great question. I mean, you know what? Let's go ahead and pick our favorite continents, right? So kangaroos. Kangaroos prefer to stay out of the zoos. They live on rangelands. So in Australia, they would happily jump across the rangelands, and wherever you see kangaroos, you can pretty much guarantee that they're on rangelands. All right, so let's go up to Asia. How about the yak? The yak is is, kind of like a cow. And they live on wide open spaces, not in forests, but on rangelands. So if we move over to Africa, let's think about the wildebeest. The wildebeest, I'm pretty sure they probably want to stay out of the zoo also, but they live on rangelands, and they actually travel hundreds, if not thousands of miles in a huge migration that they go toward the water, and they go toward green grass. So if you go up into Europe, you look across the rangelands, and you can see animals like just like mountain goats. And so they're not in forests, but they're out within the shrublands of Europe. Here in the United States, bison have historically lived out on rangelands. And so you go to South America, and you think of animals that are native to South America, like alpacas and llamas and vicuñas and guanacos. These are all camelid species, New World camels that live up in the Andes, in the mountains of South America, and live on rangelands. So I would say that you have different animals on rangelands, and also want to remind you all, they're not on Antarctica. It's the only continent where we don't have rangeland, since it's a huge sheet of ice. And so, but those are animals common to all the different continents, Dr. Moore.
We've got some questions. The first one is the amount of rangeland decreasing at all, and if so, what reasons? And are there really large reasons for why rangelands are decreasing?
Excellent. Yeah, that's a really good question. Are rangelands decreasing? And unfortunately, they are decreasing. And some of the reasons include really parsing out the land and cultivating it for either agriculture or for people to live. And so that's not only here in the United States, but that's worldwide. It's people are moving further out from cities and taking away from rangelands. Now, I would say the greatest threat to rangelands worldwide can be twofold. It can be natural disasters like fires, in which if you had a fire across this landscape that we have right here, immediately after the fire, it would literally look like the moon. And fire can occur. Sometimes fire is positive and sometimes it's negative, depending on where you are in the world. But there are some natural disasters that can really destroy these rangelands and damage them even more than urbanization or people going out and converting that to agricultural lands or to cities. So little by little, we are losing more of these rangelands worldwide, and they're definitely a nice resource that we should be keeping, and we can do that through management. So that was a great question.
Hey, I don't see any more questions popping up in the chat. Dr. Moore, anything else you want to say before we close out?
No, that was my other question, was anything that threatens rangeland. So I'm really glad somebody else asked that. But no, like always, every time I'm in the same space with you, I always learn something new. I never really thought about kangaroos in a rangeland, so now it's something that will forever stay with me. So thanks for that.
Absolutely.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Rispe, for coming and talking to us about rangelands. Again, I will echo what Dr. Moore said. Always learning something new, always something interesting, always something new. And to our participants, to our teams who are either here live or watching the recording, just wanted to reiterate the fact, if you do have questions that come up, please email us. We are more than happy to answer them for you. And we look forward to seeing what you come up with. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.